All right. Thank you guys for joining in. This is the Ish of Arabia show. It's episode 4. And this is the show where I just sit here and talk to random people about either their conversions to Christianity or what they do in the Christian circles. And I'm talking to my friend Emmanuel today. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm honestly, the first video I saw about you was you talking to Bishop Maramari, right? And I thought you were just a random guy from his church that were interviewing him. Like I didn't know
Mhm.
you were like from the States and that you and him like got contacted and then like you guys did all that together. I was like, because I know a few of the people from what's it called? Good Shepherd Church, I think it's called. I know that because one of my friends there, she makes icons and she sent me a few icons to my house and Bishop Maramari actually blessed those icons. And so
Is it
there's this video
Gabriella?
out there. Yeah, Gabriella, exactly.
Yeah,
Divine
I know her too.
Divine Art by Gabriella. No, she's crazy
Hmm.
cool. And yeah, so I literally thought you were just like some random guy from the church. And then I saw you do something with George Janko, I think. And I was
Hmm.
like, yo, this guy's just going around town talking to random people. And then you emailed my agent and you're like, yo, I want to interview Ishmael. So we're doing that eventually one day. But I was like, yo, I'm going to interview him first. It looks like I'm the one who's doing the interviews. But now I'm like, yeah, man, I'm hyped to talk to you. And I just want to know like who you are. How'd you get into this? Like, first of all, like, where you from? How'd you do this? Like, it says Assyrian on your Instagram. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Sure. Well, first of all, you did hit me with the reverse Uno card where asked to interview you, and you were like, "Yeah, but first you have to come on my podcast." Which I was like, "For sure, let's make it happen."
Yeah,
I
exactly.
appreciate the invite like usual, and so yeah, man. How I got started into this is was born into an Assyrian family. I am Assyrian, not Syrian. Assyrian, Assyrian. And basically, we were one of the first Christians in the world. We were one of the first civilizations in the world, very well known in the Old Testament. We were mentioned in the New Testament as well for the maybe people that aren't historically literate, but more so biblically literate. You'll recognize the name Assyrian. But for the people who just want to know something really quick about me, I went to school at ASU for engineering. You know, I'm a full-time engineer, and I kind of just threw my hat in the interview game probably around the year 2022, if I remember correctly. It's been about 3 years now that I've been doing interviews, but it's about 5 years since I've been making content. What I started because I just really thought I could do this. And so I was watching a lot of podcasts during that time. It was COVID, it was a shutdown, and people just weren't asking the questions I wish they would ask. So I said, you know what? I'm going to ask those questions. So I went on this really long and kind of delusional journey to basically go out there and build up a platform that would be good enough to host people that I one day wish to speak with, so in hopes that I can learn with them. And then it kind of turned into a bigger thing. It turned into a mission where now instead of it was just a selfish desire to speak to people and ask them questions I wish they answered, it turned into how can I use this platform to benefit Christians, the Assyrian nation, people who believe in freedom, and in hopes of making people improve their lives the same way someone else made me want to improve my life through content like this.
That's awesome. So did you grow up in Arizona or your family move from the Middle East, like from the Syria region?
Yeah, so my dad and my mom are born in the Middle East. My dad from Iraq and my mom from, oh, she's gonna get mad at me. I think it was Kuwait or Jordan. I always mix it up. She grew up in one of them and
They're
was born in
quite
the other.
different. They're not exactly the same country.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a lot of history there. But
Yeah.
I was personally born and raised in America. So I have the best of both worlds. I was born and raised in the greatest country in the world where all of the freedoms that we have are available to us, and then also understanding the dichotomy of being Middle Eastern, why being raised by Middle Eastern parents who were raised there as Christians who escaped the Middle East because of political and religious persecution. So I am a very well-rounded person when it comes to understanding all of the sides of this game and all the talking points that we usually hear about when it comes to the Middle East and America, you know?
Hmm. And did you like always have a Christian aspect in your life? I think you texted me that you were baptized Catholic and then now you
Yep.
more identify more with like the Assyrian church.
Yeah, yeah. So it was interesting. There's the whole Assyrian Chaldean dilemma, and we can get into that if you want. But basically, I was baptized in a Chaldean Catholic church, and essentially, what Chaldean means is the Syrian Catholic. And so I am, like I said, Assyrian. So half of our half the Sundays of the month, we would go to Assyrian Church of the East, which is one of the oldest churches in the world, established by Saint Thomas, the doubting Thomas, one of the apostles of Jesus
Hmm.
Christ, actually established this church. And it has a very long history in the Middle East. And the only reason I credit the existence of Assyria today is because of that church and what it did to have our people survive directly from the ancient Assyrian Empire. We were able to survive through them because we don't have a country anymore. But
Yeah.
then the other half of the Sundays, I would be in Roman Catholic Church. So I was raised in both churches. The reason why I say I'm not really Catholic is because I didn't take First Communion. I don't really know too much about like the catechism, and I'm not educated in that route specifically. I just really know what the denominations believe in more so than others. Like I know what the Catholics hold in high regard and their practices and the gifts, the seven gifts that they provided for the church, and also
Hmm.
the in comparison with the Assyrian church, I'm like, these are extremely similar teachings. Like when it comes to the theology and the cultural practices of the churches, I really don't see a difference. And actually, the patriarch of my church just met with the latest pope. They meet yearly. And they have open dialogue and they have these conventions together. So for all intents and purposes, to me, I don't really see a difference between the two churches.
I find it interesting too because I think it was Pope John Paul II, and I'm not sure what the patriarch's name was for the Assyrian Church of the East, but they wrote a declaration because there's a lot of controversy if the Assyrian Church was a historian or not.
Hmm.
And for all intents and purposes, it's not an historian. They don't believe that
Yeah,
Christ, his personhoods are split in any way, shape, or form. They have good
that's right.
Christology. But because of that, they actually met, I don't know if it was the 60s or the 70s, with Pope John Paul II, and they wrote down a declaration saying that they're not an historian and they have
Yeah,
correct Christology, which was an amazing thing that happened. And one thing I do like more about the Assyrian Church of the East, more than Eastern Orthodoxy or Oriental Orthodoxy, not that I have a problem with them, is they're more lenient and more forgiving about the past in the same way Catholics are, I feel, from at
mm,
least from the hierarchical perspective. And they're ready to have more dialogue with other apostolic churches. Same with the Catholics. Whereas something I noticed as a convert was, especially, this is just something I noticed, maybe it was just my experiences, but with Eastern Orthodoxy, it was quite hard to have dialogue with them because it was like, if you're not Eastern Orthodox, then you're kind of a heretic. It's over.
I see.
And that was just my personal experience. So I actually have a lot of respect for Assyrian Christians, especially because of the persecution that's happened to the Assyrians. And that's something that I relate to because of my Coptic friends in Egypt. And
Right.
which interests me because I know a lot of Coptics that still claim that Assyrians are historians,
Yeah,
and
they don't like
which
us.
was, I don't know why. Like, you guys should be best friends. I don't know what is going on because you guys are both being persecuted, but like a
Yeah.
lot of Coptic like hierarchicals are just like, yeah, we're not friends with the Assyrians. But that's interesting,
Yeah,
man. Like, thinking about all that. But yeah, go for it.
it's a very rich history. And so I never really knew that the Assyrians and the Coptics didn't have a relationship with one another. And the way that I found that out was because I would go and take the communion in the Catholic Church, even though I didn't take First Communion. Sorry, the body and blood of Christ in the Catholic Church, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
take First Communion. But because I was baptized in the Assyrian Church, and that dialogue that you're talking about in the 60s, that was open up between the two churches, the declarations, I'm able to take the Eucharist in the Catholic Church without taking First Communion because I've been baptized in the Assyrian Church. That's what the apostolic churches they came to the consensus down to. But then I found out that if I go to a Coptic church, they would not give me the body and blood of Christ. And so that's why I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, why is that? And then I learned about the Nestorian label that was put on us and that they still rejected to this day. I thought I read somewhere, and I could be wrong. I probably shouldn't even mention it, but there's another branch of heresy called
Oh, excuse me.
monophysites, And essentially what it is that it's the kind of the opposite of Nestorianism. Nestorianism is basically saying Jesus Christ is two people, two natures, two persons. So it's like split personality disorder kind of thing.
Yep.
Monophysites believes in one person, one nature under God the Father. So it's basically saying that Christ is, this is wrong, but it's saying that Christ is not divine, essentially. And
Yes.
w- I thought for some reason that was a label applied to the Coptic Church.
And it
And
was an inaccurate label that was
was
applied.
it? So it was the same thing with the Nestorian label on the Assyrian church. And so when I saw that, I was like, well, if it was never the people, by the way, like I have plenty of people that I know are Copts and
Yeah.
Coptic, and we never had any problems. We were actually just always open our dialogue with Christianity. But yeah, like you said, it's always the hierarchy. A lot of it's just coming down to just basic misunderstandings.
Yeah, I think it was so the Coptic understand themselves as Physites, and that's like the two natures become one. And then for the Assyrians, it's like, yeah, there's two natures, but they're not distinct. So really it's like just like semantics. That's how I see it. And then meanwhile, the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox are just saying like both you guys are wrong. That's what they've been doing for the last like 2,000 years, basically. But it's very interesting to see how one thing I found very interesting while looking into Assyrian Christianity is how divided it is with different groups. Like we hinted about this a little bit, but Chaldean versus
Hmm.
Assyrian, just by simply being in a different denomination, it's almost seen as though you're in a different ethnic group or nationality. And I've noticed this myself. I know people, like friends that I have from different areas in Michigan, for example, and they'll
Hmm.
say, "Oh, I'm Chaldean. I speak Chaldean. I don't speak Assyrian." But the Assyrian person, just because they're from the Assyrian Church of the East, they'll say, "I speak Assyrian." But meanwhile, they're talking to each other in the same language, calling
Yes.
it a different word. And it's very interesting to me because in Arabic we have so many dialects and we
Yeah.
understand each other for the most part. But if someone spoke to me was like pure Moroccan dialect, that would still be considered Arabic, but it's a hard dialect for me to understand. Meanwhile, these
Yeah.
people are speaking the exact same language, and it's like they're calling it different things. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So like, I guess we're gonna get into it. So basically, for lack of better terms, if you teach a kid a person, or sorry, if you teach a kid a topic from a very early age with a specific perspective and agenda in mind, that kid will grow up with that understanding no matter what you show them in the future. So,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of better words, the Chaldeans are essentially brainwashed to believe that they're their own ethnic group. But I challenge you to find me another ethnic minority group in the world where two separate groups have the same exact dances, same exact culture, speak the same language, claim the same history, are located in the same region of the world, look the exact
Yeah.
same, speak the exact same, and get confused with one another, yet they say that they're different ethnic groups. You're not going to find that. It's only between the Assyrian and Chaldeans. And the reason why is because the enemy, which is also from the Muslim descent, um, aka the Kurds and the Iraqi government, use religion to further split our people apart. And the Catholic Church is kind of complicit in this. I don't know if they did it on purpose to be vindictive or uh, they didn't know what they were leading themselves into. But essentially, what happened was when the Catholic missionaries entered Iraq, what they
Mm-hmm.
found was the Assyrian Church of the East and its people. And what they were trying to do was obviously evangelize and convert people into Catholicism in that region of the world because they didn't recognize the Assyrian Church at that point. And what happened was is that they needed a way to distinguish those peoples away from the Assyrians. And with the Assyrians at that time, like nothing was known about them. Our history was buried underground still. It
Yeah.
wasn't revealed until the 1800s by French and English archaeologists. And so the world had a very disgusting view of Assyrians because they just simply didn't know anything about us. They thought we were pagans. And so the Catholic Church said, let's go in here and let's name all of these new converts to Catholicism a separate name and let's title them Chaldean. And the reason why they titled them Chaldean is because that was the name of the people of Ur in the Old Testament, where Abraham is from. And so it was a familiar name. It was a name lost to history. And so they were like, oh, these people are in this region of the world. These people in the region of the world in the Bible are called Chaldeans. Let's name them Chaldeans. So then the
Interesting.
name Chaldean was never seen after the fall of the Chaldean Empire in the year 500 BC. It didn't reemerge into modern history until 1500s when the Catholic Church came into play and started evangelizing in the Middle East. That's the Great Divide. That's one of the great schisms in the Assyrian Church. Um, till this day, you have Chaldeans are split multiple ways. They say we're Catholic Assyrians, like how I just said in the beginning. I'm Catholic. I was baptized in a Chaldean church. I say I'm Assyrian because I
Yeah.
understand that I'm ethnically Assyrian. Then there's other Chaldeans that say no, we're Arab Catholics, and other ones that just say no, we're our complete own identity. We have nothing to do with you. But if you take DNA tests, researchers from opposite from non-Middle Eastern heritage went into the Middle East, did DNA test and analysis, and they came to the conclusion that Assyrian and Chaldeans are like to the 99th percentile the same exact people. There's no differences besides religion.
By the way, you're allowed to diss on the Catholic Church if you want to. It's a free. I'm full for free speech, by the way.
I
And
like
like,
it. I like Catholicism. I don't really have much
no, I know, I
to go
know.
about it. Yeah.
But like, for example, if we did like, if the Catholic Church did something that was stupid, then it did something that was stupid. You know what I mean? They probably didn't
I
know
don't
what they're
have any
doing, and if they did
proof.
it intentionally, they did it intentionally.
That's yeah, I don't have any proof they did it with ill intent in their hearts, but this is a
Mm-hmm.
fact. They did divide our people in a certain way. They did.
And how did like one thing I find interesting is that in Iraq and other countries like Iran and Turkey and stuff, there's a movement for Kurdistan to be a country. Is there a
Mhm.
movement similar for the Assyrians, or is it too divided in the sense that like there's too much of diaspora and there's not enough like power to really even have like a couple of villages come together? Am I being? I have no idea. Maybe I'm very ignorant about this.
No, no, you asked a very interesting question. One of my mentors and I went deep into this. He dedicated his whole entire life to basically shining a light on what you just asked. The reason why there's a movement for Kurdistan to become a region, its own quote unquote country. Kurdistan doesn't exist, first of all. It's the Kurdish
Yeah.
region of Iraq. Um, they're extremely smart people, and they realize that they no longer have to kill and massacre Assyrians to defeat them. They took the divide and conquer method. So one of the main reasons why religion became a factor in separating the Catholic and um, Assyrian Church of the East, Assyrians apart, the whole Chaldean conversation we just had, is because the Kurdish people who controlled the news outlets, magazines, articles, media in northern Iraq in the 90s when Saddam was having a no-fly zone implemented by the United States government after the Gulf War, the invasion of Kuwait after that was commenced,
Mm-hmm.
Desert Storm was the Kurdish saw that as an opportunity to spread some propaganda to divide and conquer and to solidify themselves in that region. So what they did was they uplifted the name Chaldean and they suppressed the name Assyrian so that our two people could fight amongst themselves. And it became a conspiracy. And the reason they chose the Chaldeans is because if you talk to a Chaldean person, they'll use more Arabic and they'll use a lot more like if
They're
you
very
the
Arabized. I've
average
noticed that.
they're they're very Arabized and also very in much with the Kurdish as well. They use a lot of the Kurdish names and Arabic names for their children instead of Assyrian names. And the reason for that is so that they could assimilate in those tribes easier and they got the benefits of those tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that happened on purpose or not, it's a fact that Chaldeans go ahead and they basically intermingle with Arabs and Kurds. So the Kurds saw them as an ally and whether they do it or not, they were being manipulated, and they caused a whole bunch of division. And because of that, and Desert Storm and all these different factors, the Assyrians were never able to unify under one branch, while the Kurds were dividing and conquering us, and they were able to establish themselves in the north.
This is very interesting to me because as an Egyptian, there is a movement for in a sense to like some Egyptians would say, especially the Coptics, that they're not Arabs, they're Coptic Egyptian ethnically. Um, I agree with them. It's 100% true. However, after 1400 years, well, around 12, 1300 years of being Arabized, it's kind of hard to make the argument we're another people when the language we speak, the way we act, everything we do is Arab. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it is correct that if you took, like, for example, my DNA and put it beside someone from Saudi Arabia, I am way less Arab. There's North
Mhm.
African in me, there's Coptic in me, but for all intents and purposes, I am an Arab. So I identify as an Arab. I also identify as an Egyptian. I don't see it as a contradiction. Like, because I am Arab, everything I do is Arabic, and I'm Egyptian because my dad came from Egypt and he's ethnically Egyptian. And but I feel like it's a way more tense experience for Assyrians and Chaldeans or however they want to call each other. And I just find it so interesting, this whole group, because it's not a big group. There's not many
No.
Assyrians in the world anymore, but it's
No.
all over my feed, like all over
Really?
my YouTube. Yeah, like
Mm.
what's that podcast? The one where Sam Shamoon was just on. Who he's Assyrian.
Patrick Bet
One
David.
like
Yeah.
yeah, Patrick Bet David and his Sam Shamoon. And
Yep.
then even the other guy who's the co-host is Assyrian.
Benny.
You're
Yep.
Bishop Marmar is Assyrian. Like
George
all these
Anko.
people, George Janko's Assyrian. Where are they coming from? And it's just like these people are so they're influential, and
Yeah.
I feel like there is some type of revival happening for the Assyrian people to the extent
1000%.
that other people who are I didn't even know what Assyrian was till like 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Like, no one ever taught me this. Like, it didn't happen. Like, there's no Assyrians in Egypt, like, that I know of. It doesn't exist. But apparently, like, in my own parish where I live, this actually is interesting because we're talking about Catholic and Church of the East interdialogue. There is an Assyrian family, and they're allowed to take communion at our church because
Oh,
there's no Assyrian church anywhere near us. And
wow. Interesting.
there was a whole dialogue about that, and they're like, they're 100% allowed to take communion there. I don't
Mm.
think the Coptic church here or the Eastern church here would have been happy about that, the Orthodox church, but the Catholic church was very welcoming about that. And it's just interesting that this small group has been so influential in modern time. And do you think there's anything about that? Do you think maybe it's something like God has put a blessing on the Assyrian people. Not to sound like some
Absolutely.
weird, like evangelical televangelist person, but I do find there's
Mm.
something unique about this ethnic group.
I mean, you just gave me goosebumps while thinking about it. And man, I gave a speech in front of a live audience of about 150, 200 people a couple of years ago at the Assyrian National Convention. I told them in my speech that the enemy thought that they defeated us. So we went through a genocide. We went through basically our own version of a Holocaust, 1915
Mhm.
and the 1930s and the 1800s. We were constantly murdered. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Assyrians were murdered for just being Christian by the Kurds and Turkish. And that was known as the Armenian genocide. A lot of it
Yep.
is known as. Um, what happened because of that was that our people fled across the whole entire world, the European nations, America, and Australia mainly. Believe it or not, there's Assyrians in Mexico and a lot in Canada. I said in that speech was that the enemy thought they were uprooting us from our lands, but really what happened was they planted us all over the world. It took 80 years for it to realize, but now wherever you look, you see an Assyrian in some way, shape, or form. I remember when I was a kid, you couldn't say Assyrian without giving a history lesson first because everyone was
Mhm.
either thinking that you were mispronouncing Syrian or they were thinking that you were just making a joke or they literally had no idea who you were. Now all of my white friends, like they're so passionate and zealous about my ethnic background that they go out in the cities of Utah and Mesa and all these places and they teach their friends who Assyrians are because they just love the history so much. I'm like, man, there's not another group in this world that went through what we did, went through phases, decades where no one knew who we were. And then now all of a sudden you see Assyrians in such prominent positions in society. I mean, I have a list of 50 people who are Assyrian that are extremely influential that you would have never known that they were Assyrian in the first place.
That's the thing, man. Like, I didn't know these people are Assyrian until
Mhm.
they talked about it on their podcast or in a conversation or went viral. And to the extent there was a viral conversation, and I don't know who these two people are at all. And it was about the Chaldean versus Assyrian debate, right? It was just two random people. It had nothing to do with Christianity or anything like that. It was just like them talking about this ethnic group. And they were actually bringing up the Assyrian National Conference, I think. And I wish I knew their names, but it went viral. And They were talking about the history of the Assyrian people, and it had like millions of views.
Mm.
Just millions of people were watching this. It had more views than the Assyrians in the world. And then it kind of like shocked me. I was like, that's crazy. To the extent where like
That's
I
funny.
started getting excited about this. And when I see an Assyrian, there's something about it that's very interesting because a people group that goes through all this and yet still survive, and then not just survive, but thrive and become
Mhm.
popular and famous is, if that's not God's blessing, I don't know what is, really.
Yeah, and you know, it's something you shocked me when we first started talking, when we first connected. You said if I wasn't a Catholic, I would be part of the Assyrian Church. And when you said that to me, I could not believe what I was hearing. I go,
Really?
seriously, an ex-Muslim whose religion persecuted this group so deeply would have joined this church. It blew me away, and that also goes and shows Christ's love, where regardless of what your background is, where you're from, what you did, who you might be associated to. I'm not saying you're guilty of the sins of your fathers, whatever. That's not my
Of
point.
course, yeah,
My
yeah, yeah.
point is just like the mere fact that you would have chosen that church, the Assyrian Church of the East, to go to upon your exiting of Islam, it just blew me
Mm-hmm.
away completely.
There is something about it that I don't try to over spiritualize everything. I try to be a rational person, a skeptical person sometimes. But
Mhm,
some things that are they are spiritual, and there's just something about this church from the smallest things. Like I researched so much about it, like putting the cross on the wall that faces the east, because Christ
mhm, mhm.
resurrects from there, or
Yep,
Christ comes back in the like that is a beautiful thing to me. The iconography is like there's no dogma, like the lack of councils and dogmas and all these things that happen, but they still survived. They were from day
yep,
one. They were an underground church, basically. From day one, it was just they had the Council of Nicaea, and then was it Chalcedon? No, they didn't even do Chalcedon. It was Nicaea. They got the Nicene Creed, and it was over. They're excommunicated right then and there. And
yep,
then they and everyone thought they were heretics and Nestorians. They were like all and backwards. The end of the empire in Iraq, going into China. Like they were evangelizing people in China, the Assyrian Church,
yeah,
and
that's right.
no one knew about that. I didn't know about this till like a couple years ago because I'm researching into it, and it just there's no Assyrian churches anywhere near me. I have to take like an hour flight to get to an Assyrian church. So it's just it
Yeah,
wasn't it sadly there's just not that many in areas. There's a lot of Syrians, but the churches are in only very big cities most of the time.
yeah.
And
They are sprouting up,
yeah.
but here's a fact that you might find interesting, Ish. There was I can't confirm this, but it is very well known that within the Assyrian church, when Christ handed the bread in the Last Supper and told his disciples, "Take this as in memory of me, this is my body and this is my blood," that one of the disciples, I'm pretty sure it's St. Thomas, when they ate it, they didn't eat the whole thing. So that when the early churches were established, they kept that piece of bread and were extracting the yeast from it. And all of the Eucharist till today is being grown from the yeast that Christ gave his original disciple. That's what we believe that we're eating on Sundays during transexfixiation, uh, for the body and blood of Christ, is that direct piece of
Wow.
bread that Christ actually gave in the Last Supper.
And that's only through the lineage of St. Thomas or all the apostles.
I believe it's specifically to Assyrian Church of the East.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
I have to look into that. One thing I do know is that there was I don't want to call it a myth or a legend, but there's a story about man, I gotta remember names. I can't just be saying stories without names. But there is this area where Assyria was at the time, where they asked about Jesus during Jesus' ministry, and didn't Jesus send someone to go evangelize to them, the Assyrians? Or
Oh,
am I making this up?
you're thinking of the story of Jonah and the fish. So Jonah was sent to Nineveh in the Old Testament, and he
No,
did
no,
not
no,
want to
no,
go there.
no, not that one. There's a different
Not
one.
that one?
There's a nonsense. I'm gonna look this up, and I'm even during Jesus'
Interesting.
time, while he was like
Hmm.
before he was like.
It might have been Thaddeus then. Was it
I
Thaddeus? Does
think
that
you're
sound
right.
familiar?
I think it was Thaddeus. Yes.
It might have been Thaddeus because there's two. there's two arguments about which Thaddeus was one of the founding fathers of the early church, and that's either Thaddeus, one of the 12, or Thaddeus, one of the 70, the original 70
Mm.
disciples of Christ. So I think you're speaking about Thaddeus. Yeah, no, that's true too.
Yeah, and that happened even like before the resurrection or anything. So there's a huge connection with the Assyrian people and Christ. And yeah, I just think it's beautiful. I want to get to one thing I want to ask is how did you get involved in like just filming people? Like how did it like you just woke up one day in 2022 and you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna film these people. And then well you said you were looking at interviews and you're like, I can do this too. And you started doing it. Like, who was the first person you contacted? How did this work out?
Well, so first of all, I was very bad when I first started. I had too much ego that needed to be chopped down for size, for sure. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't more of an ego like I thought I was better than people. It was more of an ego like I was confident in myself. But I knew I had a lot to learn, long way to go. He was a Syrian guy. He was coming up in the MMA game. He had a lot of traction within our community, and he just kind of popped out of nowhere. His name is Georgie Aves. He's still around. Um, I interviewed him. It went viral within our community, and then it led to a UFC fighter who just fought a couple nights ago. His name is Benil Dariush, who was
Mm-hmm.
at one point top four lightweight UFC fighters in his division. And he lost to Oliveira, and that kind of changed the directory the last couple of years. But he was extremely well known with the Assyrian community. He agreed to do that interview. He was just on my panel a few months ago. I love Benil. He's a beast. He's an absolute animal of a fighter. And by the way, extremely humble Christian man. That
Awesome.
interview then took me to the next level. And then it just kept going up and up and up. And it was through just I spent my early 20s networking, man. And I always say the Assyrian community, it's kind of an unfair advantage to a kid who wants to come out and start doing this who has no connections.
Mm-hmm.
You are one person removed from every Assyrian. So you can name me an Assyrian right now. I can tell you how I know them or how I know someone who knows them and how I will eventually meet them. We're all one person removed because, like you said, we're such small numbers. There's only 4 million of us around the world. Um, so it's not as
Is
easy
it
as I'm
just four
saying it.
million?
It's just 4 million, and that includes the Chaldeans that don't believe they're Assyrian as well. So specifically Assyrian, it's probably under 2 million, but it's 4 million with everyone included. Yeah.
That's crazy. I was thinking like maybe 10, 20. I don't know where I got the number from in my head, but 4
I
million's
wish it was
nothing.
that many. If the Armenian genocide didn't happen, we would be projected to have over 10 million of us now, but because the Armenian genocide happened, we're only 4 million. Yeah.
So they killed
But
that many
to go
people.
they killed the numbers are estimated between 600,000 to 900,000 Assyrians were murdered in
Oh,
the
Lord have
Armenian
mercy.
genocide.
Lord have mercy. That's
And that was
terrible,
just
man.
one genocide. There were multiple. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. So, but getting back to the question of how I got to the position where I'm at now, it was all divinely orchestrated because in high school I was a kid who was bottom 10th percentile. I was in a graduating class of about I think it was 64 or 66 kids. I can't remember, but I was in the bottom of those 60 kids. You know what I mean? Like I was not
That's
a good
fair.
student. It was an extremely advanced school. It was like 13 AP classes, 20 honors classes, and I just wanted to play video games and play basketball. But when I went into college, I said to myself, I want to recreate myself. And so that's exactly what I did. I basically just hunkered down and went full in on my education. And that's how I got through the engineering path. And somewhere along the lines, I just was super unsatisfied. And I just wanted to create my own content. I was inspired by a person who's doing what I'm doing now. And I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to do that, whatever it takes. And it was a very difficult
Mm,
road. And the reason why I say everything I said, I'm not qualified to do what I did. First of all, engineers, they're extremely awkward. They don't have social skills. And talking to people like how I do for a living is not what you're supposed to be doing as an engineer. You want to be tinkering things on your own in your
yeah.
silent, awkward ways, right? So that was already a disadvantage to me. I was not a good public speaker. I remember doing a public debate in high school and I absolutely pissed myself for everybody. I couldn't speak properly. So I had everything against me. I have no advantages except the fact that I was extremely ambitious, and it, I would be lying to you if I told you this was not a calling from God. I truly believe that this was a calling from God because every time I wanted to quit, there was a tugging of a string on my heart that just kept bringing me forward. And man, when I tell you I see His plan laid out like a map, like you lay your hand down, you see the roads from your fingers and all of the veins and everything. You just understand like God connected all the dots for you because I couldn't have done this on my own. If you would have told me 5 years ago you'd be sitting with George Janko or hosting a panel with Vincent Oshana and interviewing all these guys and even non-Assyrians, just sitting down with mobsters, hitmen for the John
Yeah.
Gotti and all these other guys. It's like, me? Why would I be doing that? Like, what I'm supposed to be getting my degree in electrical engineering and putting wires together for the rest of my life.
You're
Like,
like,
why would
bro,
I
I'm
be
the
sitting with
I'm
these
the
people?
awkward engineer. I don't talk to people.
That's right. Yeah. So, when God calls you, he calls everybody. It's up to you if
Mm,
you're going to answer that call, and I answer that call.
wow. And how do you balance that? That's my biggest question. How do you balance doing all this
Well,
with your engineer, with your personal life, and then like, is it gonna keep going for the future? Is this your plan for life? Is one gonna outweigh the other?
I have a conversation all the time with God where I say to him, if this was the last interview you ever needed me to do, and you all this whole time you just needed me to reach one person that led him to you, and you never blessed me with an interview opportunity ever again, I'll take it. That's fine. I'll find something else. I'll answer my next calling that you have me go down. Do I want to keep doing this? Yeah, I do. But
Hmm.
you know, if you care about something, you will make the time for it. And I care about all the things you just mentioned to me. There are seasons though that you're gonna have to go through where things will take a hit. I luckily went through this during COVID, and I had some free time on my hands because everything was shut down. And so I
Hmm.
dumped in 60, 70% of my time in that. And I was single at the time. Now I'm in a relationship, now full-time career, now doing the podcast, now working, traveling, all of these things, putting a team together to do an interview, it's still difficult. And I still put in the same amount of time and energy and effort I did before. But because you scaled in different ways as time goes on, I can put less energy and effort into it than I did in the beginning. You understand? So
Yeah.
now I'm allocating my resources differently than it was before. So before it was like 100% of my time, go all in. Now it's 60% of my time. I can take a step back because I have some things automated behind the scenes that I didn't have established back then. So I figured out putting systems in place to make me just as efficient as I was if I was going 100%. But now I can be in multiple places at once, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's healthy that you did it at a time when it was like lockdown. You know what I mean? Where there wasn't too many things happening at once. You could really focus on it. So when things went back to normal, you could really just find a way to have a balance in life. Like for example, I think of myself. I don't know why I think of myself. This is not about me, but because I March of this year I was no one. Then in April everything went crazy for me, and I was
Mm,
just like I had no mechanisms to understand what to do, right? I almost
mm,
in a way it was great. In a way it was like thank you Lord for giving me this opportunity. But in another way it was quite overwhelming the first week or two because
yeah.
everyone thought I had like all these like mechanisms. Like I had like a team, I had agents. They're like offered me to write a book about me, fly me out, and I'm like, bro,
Wow.
I'm just some random guy who just happened to go viral on a video, and now everyone thinks I'm like this multi-millionaire speaker. It was very crazy. It was a really crazy moment in my life, and it took a couple of months really to really come down from that. And in a sense, I think there's benefits and there's downfalls to it. The benefit is it grew significantly, and I was like thrown into water, and I could like kind of just learn by doing it.
Yeah.
And but the downfall is it took a lot of juggling and a lot of things fell apart as well. But now I'm in a better place, obviously, and I can focus on what I'm doing. But the first month was quite hectic. So it's just interesting that different people
I
go in
couldn't
different directions.
Yeah, I couldn't understand what you went through, man, because you blew up. Like, I remember watching your first interview with Matt Fradd on my way to a drive-in movie theater with my girlfriend. We were gonna go watch the new Captain America movie. And I was listening to it and I was like, yo, this kid, like he's young. And now I'm looking at the views. I'm like, wow, millions of views on this clip, millions of views on that clip. And I was like, this is his first interview. This is crazy. For me, it
Yeah.
took me 5 years for people to even know who I was. If someone recognized my content, they go, "Oh, you were that guy who interviewed Maudemati." You know what I mean? Like, you were that guy. They didn't know my name. So it took 5 years
Hmm.
to get to that point, and still nobody knows who I am. I'm a nobody relatively. I have a very small corner of the internet where, like, I just talk to in this bubble. And it's cool. Like, whatever God blesses me with, bro, I'm cool. I'm just a normal dude also, like, just like you. There's nothing special
Yeah,
about me,
exactly.
and that's what I want the viewer to take away from this. It's like we're both normal guys who had a calling in our hearts to speak, and so we did. And now multiple people across the world who we have no idea that even exists are, benefiting from us just speaking about our experiences with Christianity.
Exactly. You know what's the funniest thing is when people message me, they're like, "Oh, dear sir, if you don't mind or have time, can we fly you out for this thing?" And I'm just like, "Bro, just talk to me normally. Like I'm just a guy.
Yeah,
Like I'm just
yeah,
be like, "Hey Ishmael, like how you doing? Like just you want to come out?" And like, "Yeah, I'd be fine." But it's funny cuz the first interaction is awkward, and then once they realize I'm just like a normal person, then it's like, "Oh, they're fine." But there's this someone, I'm not going to say who it is, but I made a joke. I shouldn't have made this joke, but they're like, "Can I have you on this show?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's $10 a second." I was making this joke, right? And he's just like, "Oh, I can see. I can ask my producers if we can charge that." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not gonna charge you $10 a second to have me on your show. Are you serious, bro?" Like, he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were being." It's like he didn't know I was joking. So it was just funny that seeing those moments where people expect a different interaction that's gonna happen,
yeah,
and they're just like, "Oh, he's just the
yeah.
guy who like." Watches TV like everyone else. It's hilarious, but yeah.
Well, when I first started, I heard a quote that really set me up mentally for what I was about to eventually walk into, and that was, if you don't tell the world who you are, the world will tell everybody who you are. So if you don't
Mhm.
go out there and let the world how you operate, what you value, how you present yourself, then people who may not like you or may not have your interests in mind, they'll dictate what the world should think about you. And so I made that very clear in the beginning how I want people to perceive me. And I try my best doing it now still with I'm trying to be serious, lighthearted. I joke around all the time. You and I message each other all the time. We know how we speak to each
Mhm.
other. I'm not business all the time. But also, it's important to keep that up because you don't want people just sending you messages like they're your buddy also because it's like, well, I don't there is a layer of boundaries you need to set with people. It's like I don't know you, so I don't know like where we can go with these jokes and there is a layer of formality and that's
I
the way that I
kinda
like it.
sometimes I like to tamper with the boundary a little bit to see if they're gonna go there. And if they don't, then I go back a little bit, and I'm like, "Okay, he's good."
Yeah.
Like,
And I
that's
for
his
sure went there
boundary.
with you, yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
we definitely did. It was fine, yeah. I there's I'm thinking about one meme I sent you. I think you already know what I'm thinking about, and as soon as I sent it and you're like, "Bro, you're hilarious," I'm like, "He's good. He's fine." I think he's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah. I guess my last question, man, is basically, did you always believe in the claims of Christianity, or did you have a conversion moment, or was it just
Mm.
like you're brought up in a tradition and eventually made it your own? Like, tell us how your life story. You already kind of went through, but like, what, like, just 5 seconds, not 5 seconds. Do what you want, like as best you can. How did you meet Jesus?
I got you. I'll keep it brief. I was born in the church. I was raised in the church, and my parents taught me life through a lens of sin. So my dad is one of those
Mm-hmm.
dads where it's like if your shoe's upside down or if you don't take leftovers home, he goes, "That's a sin. That's a sin." Everything was a sin to my dad. Everything's a sin till this day to my dad. Uh, so
Sounds
I,
like a
I
Muslim.
always had a Really? Okay. It was a Middle Eastern mindset.
It
So
is,
that's
yeah.
probably where it came from. And so because of that, I was very conscientious while walking through life that things that could be like bad could be sins. And I didn't want to be in trouble with God. So I was always I had a very strong moral compass as I was a kid. So I would say that I had extreme faith when I was a kid because of that. That was a very important imprint that was left upon me at a very early age since I could remember. And I was always in the church. All of my friends were in the church but I knew nothing about Jesus. I actually didn't finish the New Testament until last year at the age of 25. Okay.
Oh wow.
That was the first time I ever read the New Testament cover to cover, even though being in the church for 26 years. So, because I'm 26 now. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I always had a relationship with Christ Personally, I had a lot of anecdotes in my life where I wanted to just tell people like, "Hey, I wouldn't be alive today. I almost got in a car accident and I closed my eyes and I got out of it." Who closes their eyes before getting in a car accident and you survive that? I had a lot of random weird encounters in my life, and my parents are probably gonna watch this. They're gonna freak out after they heard that, but it's true. I had and I was like, "There's no way I could have been alive without God." And a lot of these moments, I should have failed high school. I should have not been the person I turned out to be today, and it was all because of God's divine mercy. And so when I started doing the live interviews and podcasts and stuff like this, I realized I was getting pushback from a lot of people from outside communities, and they were asking me questions that I couldn't answer. So I realized that I knew God on a personal level, but I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know Jesus in a biblical sense. I didn't know what he said. I didn't know quotes from him. I didn't know what he was teaching. I just knew be a good person in the Ten Commandments. That's it.
Hmm.
So I took it upon myself where I was like, listen, if I'm going to be talking about this publicly, I need to know what I'm talking about. So I went on a journey and I was like, do I really believe in Christianity as a religion? Because I would always hear these things like, oh, Christianity is a religion that you shouldn't follow, but you should follow Jesus the man. Where I'm like, well, hold on, there's got to be some truth in Christianity, right? So I bought a
Yeah.
book called Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. I'm sure you heard of it.
Oh yeah.
And then I bought I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek. And I bought one
Mm.
more 10 questions Christians are afraid to ask, I think is what it's called. So I bought these 3 books. While I'm reading these 3 books, I'm reading the New Testament every Sunday at church. And after I finished those 3 books, it answered every single question I ever had doubting Christianity. And because I had my own doubts, I did. I didn't
Hmm.
know if the disciples were trustworthy. I didn't know if the manuscripts of the New Testament were worth reading because they were corrupted or not. I didn't know where our archaeological evidence was coming from. Was Jesus really the man that he said he was, or was he a crazy person and people just fell for it and believed it? Were the people back then dumber than the people of today? And I got all my answers from these books that were outside biblical sources that were directly answering my doubts. And after I finished, I never had a doubt again. But then when I finished the New Testament, that was when I knew Jesus. When I read Lee Strobel's book, Case for Christ, that was when I knew that Christianity was worth following. So I had personal belief. I had a really strong foundation in the church. I had an open mindedness coming into it. But I really wanted to know if the religion I was following was worth it or if I was just stuck in something I was born into and I got my answers.
That's awesome, man. I asked this also. I didn't say like within 5 seconds for you to rush. You could take 2 hours.
Oh, no,
I
you're
was
good.
just trying to.
Yeah.
I was just phrasing a question, but it's interesting to me because, in my perspective, I could always know I picked Christianity because I picked it. You know what I mean? Because there's
Mm,
nothing for me to like. I know people who grew up Muslim and then left and then came back and said I picked it for myself, and grew up Christian and then left and then said they picked it for themselves. And that's beautiful. Like, well, the Christian one's beautiful, obviously. Like that's beautiful to pick Christianity for yourself, even if you grew up in it as a tradition. But I always wonder sometimes, would individuals, this is not like directed to you, but would individuals who make the claim that they picked it for themselves actually pick it for themselves if they weren't raised Christian?
mhm.
Like, where does the free will and determinism kind of fall in that way? Because I'm a very hardcore free will person, and that's why I could never be a Calvinist, which is a whole different subject, which we don't have to go into at all. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like 'cause I kind of just know consciously that I chose Christ, and when you like you make a decision, even though God's grace is playing in it. And this
Mm,
isn't really a question; it's more of me just having like a thought of I know people personally who are like, yeah, I grew up Christian, I picked it for myself, but there's always a whisper of doubt whenever I hear that. It's like, how do you know?
mhm.
Do you ever
Yeah,
think
no, it's
that way, or
interesting.
is it just me?
No, no, I know what you're talking about. One of my mentors walked away from the faith, even though he was raised in the Assyrian church his whole entire life. He's in his 70s now. And one the first time I met him, we just ended up debating for an hour about if Christianity is legitimate or not, and we got into the
Mm-hmm.
Calvinism about the predestination aspect of it. And listen, sometimes God calls people for specific, for example, Judas, right? Judas was always destined to betray Christ. And if it wasn't Judas, it would have been somebody else. But Judas was specifically chosen to do what he did. Now, if you ask me, is Judas in heaven or in hell? If I'm a betting man, I'm not going to say heaven, unfortunately. And so
Mm.
these are the hard questions that you have to consider about with Christianity as well. Because it's like, well, what kind of just and righteous God would predestine a man and pick him to betray his, himself so that man's soul is condemned to hell now. It's like, well, I don't know if he repented before he hung himself. Also, like I can't answer these things. So I have to wrestle with those ideas. And so there's a lot of people also who they like, I chose Christianity on my own. Was it really why if that's true, then why then weren't other Muslims your age, your friends also going to the religion? Why weren't they chosen? Why didn't God unveil their eyes? Why didn't he lift that
Mm-hmm.
thinly covered veil upon their eyes the same way he did for you? Well, it's the same thing. I have to go back and wrestle with Judas, where it's like some people are just chosen for specific functions in society and life. I don't know why God chooses certain people. I really don't. But
We're not
I do
supposed to
believe,
know, I guess.
yeah, that's part of the mystery, man, and that's the hard thing because you can ask me about the history of Christianity, you can ask me about manuscripts, you can ask me about all these things, these worldly things, and I can answer most of them. The apologetics approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual side is what I struggle with the most till this day.
And I don't blame you, because I'll say this: every prayer I ever prayed to Jesus has been answered in some way.
Me too.
Um, but maybe because I'm human, I still doubt that he's gonna answer the rest of them that I pray now.
Mhm. Mhm,
Or
mhm.
you know what I mean? I'm just a small human being, and I have these questions. And I think that prayer will be answered. How does this work out? I just don't think it'll be answered here.
That's interesting. Every I have a very similar saying. I would say that God has answered every single one of my prayers, just not the time and the way that I wanted him to.
Exactly.
Every single time I prayed for something, I got it. It just either happened 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and it happened in ways where I wasn't expecting, out of nowhere.
Mhm.
So,
And
it
yet we
depends
don't
what you're
trust
praying
him
for.
still, which is crazy.
We don't trust them. It's human nature. We want security, and when we don't see things happening in an instant, we haven't conditioned our brains to go for the long game. I believe, especially
Mm.
if you're a younger guy, we're in our 20s. Um,
Yeah.
the rational mind will understand that at times you're irrational, and so that's just something that you have to constantly remind yourself. Is like, well, if God provided for you once, He will provide for you again. He won't just pick up and leave. And so those are also. It's like when you have anxiety, right? God's not gonna just cure your anxiety like that, and you never have anxiety ever again. Bryce Crawford is a person I interviewed as well. He was always telling me he told me in our interview how he had, the day he gave his life to Christ, all of his anxiety attacks stopped. Well, a few months ago, this year, 2025, he had a video come out saying he got his first anxiety attack since he given his life to Christ.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And the reason why I'm like, okay, well, he gave you a nice solid break, but guess what? God doesn't, and this isn't specifically towards Bryce. He's just a really good example because I know this about
Mhm.
him. But God doesn't just take away your ailments in life. He will let you sit with them and let them kind of agonize you, but he will soften their blow because then you'll never get rid of Christ. You'll always need to keep him around. And it's him letting you know, like, hey, buddy, you're not going to defeat this on your own. I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to comfort you through this. I'm going to make sure you know that it's not your power that's getting you through this. It's me. So I'm not going to fully get rid of
Amen.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. Do you have any final thoughts or words for the audience before we wrap this up? Anything you want to say?
Well, there will be a part two to this interview one day, and it will be in person, and it's coming
Mhm.
soon between you and I. So if they want to see more of that, the tables will be turned. I'm going to be interviewing you, and we're going to go be deeper into the dynamics of being a Syrian you being a former Muslim coming to Christianity with the Muslim persecutions on Christians. It's going to be a great conversation. I'm so excited to have it with you, bro. And
It's gonna be
thank you
hype.
again for, yeah, bro. I can't wait. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
100%, man. Thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, glory to Jesus Christ. And I pray that one day our apostolic churches will come back together and all this nonsense will be over.
Amen.
In Jesus'
Thank you.
name, amen.